Going in 3. Okay, now it's going.
It's going now?
Yeah.
Did I start?
Yeah.
Oh, okay. Hey guys, I'm not a very well-known player. I play online for fun, and then I really don't like playing online with strangers I don't know, because a lot of them get really salty very fast. And a lot don't know what they're doing on DN and stuff, which is also annoying. I stopped doing DN because of that. Anyway, after rambling, this is my deck profile of Dark Worlds. My friend took it onto a Dark World tournament, and I guess it was called like the True Chaos deck or something wild like that. The name of this deck, and I want you guys to remember this, because this name is very, very important. I call it the Chichi Moge deck. I don't know if you know what that means in Japanese. It means to grope breasts. So there you go. I did call it Furikuri at first, but after I started taking some stuff in, I decided it was time for a name change. So, anyway, on to the deck profile. I have the 3 Graphas, pretty self-explanatory. The only thing I want to note that's different about Grapha in this deck is that Grapha is usually not the star. Usually I want at least 2 Graphas available to me at any time, and that's to overlay into Xyz monsters. This idea originated because what I was running into at the time was people banishing it with things like Caius, BLS, Chaos Sorcerer, and so I started using the rank 8 just for protection as that, as well as to get a very high level monster out, and then have Graphas back engraved to continue spam. Obviously, rank 8s have gotten better in a while. Like, I was first running number 40, and since then I've added a lot more rank 8s. But something you guys should know, Grapha's not the star. It's what Grapha can lead into. And he's a abusable resource, like a little gimp. Snow's obvious. I don't really need to explain Snow's. You discard, search, whatever. Discard, draw, Broww. That, you know, what's so special? Sillva. I run 2 Sillva instead of the 3, and then I run 2 gold, but we'll get to that in a minute. Sillva is an answer to other Dark World decks sometimes. If it's in hand, dealings, oh cool. You -2 in hand, and I'm at an incredible advantage now. Obviously, that's not how Game 2 goes, but, you know, it's still very nice. I also feel very comfortable having 4 level 5 monsters for a rank 5 engine. Gold, same thing with Sillva, rank 5 engine. Another thing to note is that they're bounceable for Grapha and Grapha spam with special summons themselves. So, yeah, that's another reason why I run them. But Gold, I very rarely pop 2 cards with a second effect. He's just more or less there as rank 5 for Grapha and for some synchro plays. Beiige, similarly with the Gold and Sillvas, there for Grapha spam because he can special summon himself, there for synchro plays. Not so much Xyz. Xyz are usually desperation with him. But, yeah, he's more or less there just for Grapha. And he can be normal summoned, unlike Sillva and Gold. I have the 2 options there available to me. Tour Guides. Tour Guides took me a while to warm up to. Tour Guides was like the popular card I did not want to play for the longest time. I was just like, everyone's playing Tour Guide. I really don't want to. But after I decided to run Tour Guide, more or less the pushing decision was, A, it gives me defensive options, and B, I can spam some stuff with it if I play her right. So, something to keep in mind. I usually don't fish Broww for her. I usually get Tour Guide with Tour Guide because most games that are like that, I can tell, will end too fast for me to take advantage of the second one. So, just FYI. Gates, explanatory. You know, do I need to say anything? Dealings, again, explanatory. Trance is a little different. Some people run him, some people don't. I run him for 3 reasons. 1, he's a pretty reliable discard engine. 2, he's a pretty big monster, even without his discard and gates. 18 beat, not too bad. And 3, he's somewhat of a recycle engine. I don't know if you could be able to tell with how I first opened up with Grapha and the rank 8s and how I don't like him being banished. I really don't like him being banished. So if he gets banished, Trance allows me a way to kind of retrieve him back as well. And even if Grapha isn't banished, if I start using gates with things like Snoww and Broww, I can get Snoww or Broww back. Either way. He's pretty good. I like him. He's sometimes one of the first things I cite out, but that really depends on the matchup. Ravens. Ravens, at first glance, are for a very good discard engine. People like to say, this is Fabled Dark World. This is the only Fabled monster I run. But, Fabled Raven not only is a good discard engine, but he allows me to go into some synchro plays as well as some rank 5s on occasion. But ultimately, my favorite play to make with him is something like him and Beiige. So I'd only discard the Beiige. He's level 3. Beiige special summons. I have the option to synchro 5, depending on the matchup. Most decks, I will usually bounce Beiige for Grapha and sync 11 into Star Eater. That's a very nasty surprise in this deck. No one expects it. So, I like Fabled Raven for just even that play. He's really good. Darkwold Lightning. For a while, back row was the bane of Dark Worlds. It still is. I feel like if you're playing Dark Worlds and you're not having some form of back row hate, like all you're popping with Grapha's monsters, you're not playing the deck right. But that's my personal opinion. I can't tell you how to play your deck. But, Darkwold Lightning allows me to do some back row hate as well as some set monsters. It's really effective against Ghost Tricks right now. Troll all day, but like really it's more or less there because it gives me a lot of very valuable options, but more importantly, it gets rid of that back row that I am very, very afraid of most of the time. Morphing Jar is obvious. I will say my only gripe with Morphing Jar is that sometimes he gives my opponent a fresh new hand that they desperately needed, and then they will go in to win the game. But that's more or less it. He's really good for desperation, and I will still run him. There might be times I side him out, there might be times I not, but all that said, I miss card destruction. I ran card destruction here for the longest time, until I got hit post-September ban list, which leads me into my 2 Smogs. Pre-September, I was running 1 Smog. I didn't really find it too useful because a lot of decks didn't want to play the graveyard strategy because there was a lot of graveyard hate. Macro, D-Fisher, just to name a few of the really popular ones. Those got hit, as well as card destruction and Erad got put down to 1. I was running 2 at the time. So one of the modifications I made, and one of the meta calls I made too, was running a second Smog. I figured Grave decks would be a lot more popular, particularly Dark Worlds too, and Smog answers that very well. It also turns Grapha if played defensively, because I usually play defensively. I don't go all in just to have Mirror Force or something ridiculous like that. I'm very timid when it comes to stuff. So Smog allows Grapha to turn into a trap, more or less. It's very effective against Boojins in this instance. Yamato, cool, put my 1 protection card in the grave. Smog, banish it, discard Grapha. Bye Yamato, bye Boojins. It's really effective. Foolish adds that speed that I need to the deck. I need Grapha and Grave. Even if I don't always discard it, that doesn't mean I'm going to do Sworns or Mill or whatever else. I just need the 1 most of the time to be able to have something big and threatening on the field so I don't just take a bunch of damage. Foolish is another one of those cards that may or may not get cited out one of the first things. It usually is, but it's still very quintessential to the deck and how it allows it to kind of do things most of the time. Because Darkwold players, I'm sure you've noticed, there's plenty of those hands when you have all monsters, no discards, or all your discards and no monsters. This kind of helps resolve that a little bit. Not to any extreme case, but it certainly gives you something to work with in worst case scenario. Allure, I wasn't a fan of Allure either for a little while. I have a Forbidden build of this same deck that I ran that in for speed. I liked it, and then when the September ban list came out and Card Destruction and Erad got hit, I was like, well, second Smog, what else do I put in? Allure, draw cards. It isn't bad, it isn't great, it's nice. That's as much as I can say about it. Breakthrough skills are amazing, particularly because they answer a lot of problems that this deck was running into for a while, like Banisher of the Radiance. I had a match lost to just Banisher of the Radiance, because I couldn't destroy it, I couldn't run over it. There was a lot of back row, and I'm not sure if you're familiar with Banisher, but it's like macro monster form, so Breakthrough Skill answers that. It also answers things like Rabbit and Stardust, things that I'm afraid of sometimes. Stardust, not so much, but like Rabbit, for when this card first came out, Rabbit was still at 2, I believe. This and Effect Veiler were the only two things that could stop Rabbit completely, outside of some other weird stuff. But that was the main motivation running this, and then later on, as I was having those matchups against Banisher of the Radiance and stuff like that, I was thinking, might want to take Effect Veiler out for this, and main 3 of these. It's very useful. I love them. Erad is very obvious. I don't main Devi, but I do main Erad because Erad will be effective against any deck I ever played against. I could call spells. A deck will be at a disadvantage. I could call traps. A deck will still be at an disadvantage. There's some matchups where only one or the other will work. Obviously, like spellbooks, they shouldn't be running any traps if you know what you're doing with it. But you know, this is good basically against every deck. And another reason why I started running Erads too, I was running 2 when it was unlimited. Obviously, I can only run 1 now. But another reason why I was running Erad was it protected Grapha. If I had Grapha on field and they did something like BLS or Caius Chain, Grapha saved. And I super minus my opponent, so I like Erad. MST, believe it or not, there's still sides to Dark World. Shadow Imprisoning Mirror, Soul Drain still a thing. People could still side Macro, D-Fisher. I'm surprised I don't ever see Royal Prison, but that's another one. There's still a lot of back row that can really, really hurt Dark Worlds, and so I still main 3 MST. And even if they don't have any sides that really hurt Dark Worlds, or don't side anything, MST is just good. And something else to note, and some food for thought. Our rules are going to be changing in Yu-Gi-Oh! Soon. Soon, both players will be allowed a field spell. I can't rely on gates anymore to answer my opponent's field spell, and vice versa. MST is going to come in handy for that. Another reason to still main 3, regardless. And then finally, my really, really weird card that I main in this, BLS. And you must be asking me, why you run this? You only have 2 lights. Some people get really, really upset when people are playing Dark Worlds and there's only 2 lights in the main deck, and they go, oh, you should run BLS. I began running BLS with Effect Veilers as my negation instead of Breakthrough Skill alongside Raven. I had 5 lights in deck, I believe, so it made BLS very compatible. The reason why I still keep him, despite not running Veiler anymore, is that the more I've worked on my extra deck and the more that has changed as new cards have been coming out, the more lights are still in there. And so if I get that extra deck play, and I usually do, I'll have that light engraved for BLS as well, alongside Fabled Raven. So he's really compatible with that in mind. Sometimes he's not that great, sometimes he is a dead draw, but I still like having him in here. And when it comes to Game 2 and I've sided out, again, this is one of the first cards that gets sided out, and it's not that difficult of a decision. He's not quintessential, he's just a very, very nasty surprise no one will ever expect. Now, on to my extra deck.
For the people that are wondering, who's holding the camera, I'm Jason. I'm currently the top 100 player in the world, so I know this deck inside and out. It's a very good deck. I've seen it top at locals many, many times. I took it tonight, and I got second. The only reason why I got second and not first is because I drew crap against Fujins, and I decided to be a dick and not actually play. So, that being said, this deck is very, very powerful. And he takes very good care of this deck. As you can tell, these are very nice books. They're actual leather books.
They're not leather.
They're not? They feel like it.
They feel like it. For those of you who are not familiar, there was a collectible card game based off the anime Zatch Bell. And this was the way that they presented the card game. You could play the cards directly from the spellbooks. They were really nice binders. They're kind of hard to find on the internet now. But I managed to find some, and I decided, because this deck means a lot to me, I wanted to treat it very nice, and I could do this with the extra deck, because there's like 16 pages in each of these little books, and that's the perfect size for the side deck and the extra deck. So I keep my side and extra in both.
and we love just building this deck over and over again. I'm right now working on mine. I'm doing the lowest rarity. As you guys can tell, this deck is in the highest rarity, and the cards that are not in the highest rarity, like the golds.
That's preference.
Yeah, it's gold.
Rare gold. Who wouldn't?
The ghost rare MSTs, they just look beautiful. That's why.
Well, that is technically highest rarity. It's not just the most expensive print, though.
Yeah, but anyways, we'll go into the extra right now.
Yeah. Anyway, as I already said, this is a nice little Zatch Bell spellbook thing. I keep it in here. It's the perfect size. I also sleeve my cards really fancy. This might be a little hard to read. I don't really take this deck to higher tournaments because we live in a very small town, so you know.
But our meta is one of the hardest.
Yeah, it's pretty difficult. If I took this deck to regionals, I would first ask about these sleeves. But this is how I use the sleeves in the deluxe edition. I think it looks pretty. Anyway, if you can't tell what this card is because Ghost Rare, this is Star Eater. As I kind of explained the play with Fabled Raven and Grapha, it's just nice. It's really threatening, and people don't expect it. Dark End Dragon. This one I'm debating on keeping or taking out. I'm not entirely sure. I'm constantly working on this extra deck, especially as more and more cards come out that are very compatible with Dark Worlds. But he's a good rank... no, not rank 5. Sorry. Sync 8 monster that I can use Raven and Gold and Sillva to get rid of something that I desperately need to get rid of on field. And for a while, when he was very popular with plays in this deck, I would use him to overlay with Grapha, if I only had one Grapha, too. He's okay for what he does. I like him. I might take him out for other stuff. I'm not sure. Crimson Blader. Right now, the meta is dominated by a lot of lower-level monster decks. I still run Crimson Blader because occasionally there's the higher-level deck, and there's always going to be the higher-level deck. And what he sets up is, okay, I attack the monster, you can't summon the higher monsters, cool. Next turn, I'm probably going to kill you, because if you really want that play, you might not summon anything, and your field will be clear. So...
And it's super fun to, if they don't have gates, and you're playing against a mirror match, go into him, you attack the Grapha, and now you just won the game just off of this.
In fact, the funny story behind this was that this was one of my... I played against someone else other than Jason online constantly, and that's how this deck got as good as it did. Because I would constantly play a lot of really hard decks. He was playing like Bylon's Swarming with Bylon Element. Stuff that aren't necessarily meta, or I don't think ever were, but they were still really tough matchups. And sometimes what he would do against me was go into Crimson Blader when he was playing Dragoonides and lock me, and I'd lose. So I was like, Crimson Blader's a good card. It's a good card. So I decided to start running it when it was available, and it's still a good card. Even if it's not effective against every deck right now, he's still worth running. Dark Highlander. Dark Highlander is two things. He's the Synchro Lock, and he is the Desperation play. Synchro Lock, obviously, against Karakuris and stuff. In fact, I actually won an entire game just using him, because the Karakuris couldn't get anything strong enough to go over him, even after switching him into defense. So, he's really good, apparently. But he's really good against Synchro decks, obviously, and then as a Desperation play, he's a 3100 beater, 2600 defense, compatible with Erad, compatible with Deck Devi. He's okay for what he does, and for the plays I have to use him for. I really like him. Something to keep in mind before I continue here. I'm not entirely done with the synchros. With my current online build, I'm experimenting with Ancient Fairy Dragon, the manga counterpart. Because likelihood, I'm going to have Gates active a lot. I get to pop stuff for free with her. So, you do the math on that. I might change that later. There's still a lot with the extra deck that's constantly changing because, again, new cards come out and it's like, this seems nice, I might want to run it. Getting into the rank 8s after the synchros. Felgrand. Do I really need to say anything more? That's pretty self-explanatory.
To say something about this guy, Dark Highlander, to go back. I was playing against... I forget what deck I was playing against. I think it was Mojolte's. And he said, Eradicator's not going to hurt me. I went for this guy first turn, had Eradicator face down. He summoned the monster that adds a spell, let him add it, flipped Erad over, distributed him, called spells, and he literally went, "You just screwed me over." And the next turn, I saw what he set. I had MST in hand, like I drew the MST, and he's like, "Oh, you shouldn't blind MST." But the Erad had done such a to his back row. I didn't hit the whatchamacallit, Phoenix Chain.
Right.
But I did such destruction to his deck with this Erad that I won that game. Game 2, I did some shenanigans with deck Devi. Skill Drain and
Rivalry of Warlords. Them.
Yeah, I locked him out of his deck. It was so much fun, and I literally wanted to prolong the game.
But we'll go into the sides here. In a little bit, yeah.
We'll go back to the.
But anyway, Felgrand. Do I really need to say anything more? 107. Not a very popular card, I've noticed, and I'm a little amazed why this isn't a popular card. Because first of all, if I'm playing against something like Mermails, where I know if I'm attacking face the monster, I'm going to set something off. He'll get angry and can attack twice, go in for some major damage, and possibly even OTK, depending on what I just hit.
I did that today. I'd OTK'd somebody with this.
Yeah, he's really, really good. Another thing, too, another really popular deck, that Beast deck with the rank 2s. Really nice deck. I like it, but I notice a lot of people playing it, and a lot of people don't have answers. And I'm just like, Tachyon? Everything's answered. And another thing to keep in mind with Tachyon, too, against Boojins right now, which are insanely popular. Part of the reason why I'm actually kind of taking a break right now, because Intervention's ridiculous. But, let's say I know they have a Crane in hand, and they only have Yamato on field. Overlay into this, are you going to use Crane? Because you're going to lose. Because he immediately gains the 1,000 after Crane resolves.
1,000, so he becomes a 4,000 attack monster.
To the 36, goes over Yamato, and goes in for some more damage after that still.
What's also super cool about him, too, is that when you pop this out, it looks like you're... some people have commented that 107, when it is played, it protects the Graphas.
Oh yeah, like I've said, the rank 8s, the entire purpose to running rank 8s in the first place was like, oh, Graphas, you can't banish them now.
And his effect can always be used because you can bounce back Graphas.
Not always be used. You actually, I believe the activation requirement means that you do have to have at least one other monster on field that can be affected by him.
Yeah.
But
usually,
why?
Usually when you pull him out, you have that Grapha engine going. So
you either have the Grapha, you either have the Beiige alongside him, and then after the battle phase is done, bounce that for Grapha again. Really tough to answer, really, really scary. I run 2, because most of the time, if 107 is very threatening to my opponent, they will take care of him. Or I'll go into Mirror Force, whatever. I will have that second one to rely on. And still nasty surprise. And that's more or less it.
It's a beautiful card.
Yeah. I like the Ghost Rare. I like Ghost Rares. Most people don't. I do. Heliopolis is going to... if I don't play around with the build online more with the extra, this will go out for that Ancient Fairy I mentioned. But right now, I started running him because, 1, he was one of the few good rank 8s at the time. And 2... 3 reasons. 2, he answers Gores. Gores I really don't like either. He's a good card. I like him as a card. But when he's played against me, it's just like... So I could overlay into that and just pop it and be like, I'm done with you. Also, light, compatible with BLS.
And it's a beat stick.
It's a huge beat stick, and I can sack small fry stuff that is just on field like Morphing Jar. Very compatible with Graphas too, because I can bring Grapha back, no problem. So just tribute Grapha, the Morphing Jar, pop stuff for very little to no cost. Like I said, though, he's probably going to be what goes out for the Ancient Fairy Dragon whenever that comes out, if I don't mess with the build more online. I love this card. I love Zombie Stein so much. 4,500 attack answers Dark World's power problem. You see,
most people will say gates with Grapha's 3000, blah, 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 blah. Well, most of the time, if your opponent knows what they're doing against Dark Worlds, they will destroy gates. And even more so as we have that rule change occur with the field spells. Grapha will most of the time be sitting at 27 and is easily ran over by most decks. 22 is not. He's a really, really big honker. Another thing I like about him was that at the time he first came out and I first started running him, Monster Reborn was still limited. And this would happen several times in several matches too. I would go for Graphas, attack. Their field would be clear, they would have no hand. Whatever they would be able to change the game state with would be whatever they top decked. So I would overlay into Zombie Stein. Alright. And occasionally they would actually top into Monster Reborn or something similar. Play it, I'll negate with Zombie Stein. Zombie Stein allows you to get that critical negate on some cards, as well as being a very big and threatening monster. I love him. I love him so much, I run 2 copies. I don't run 3, that's excessive, but at 2 is really good because most of the time he's like, big and threatening, Dark Hole, okay. Or I'll use his negation effect. He'll be put in defense with only 1,000 defense. He's not invincible, but, you know, if I use that negation and they end up being able to kill him, fine. I can get another one.
Also, something kind of cool about Zombie Stein is he's actually compatible with Erad.
Erad 2 and BLS.
Yeah.
Because he's zombie, I wouldn't banish him for gates.
I love going for 22 in the sense that I want to end the game, but I don't want my Graphas to end the game.
Right.
Usually what you want to do with him is main battle phase, attack with the 2 Graphas, main phase 2, go for this.
Yeah, more or less, but that really depends on what the field looks like.
Yeah.
A lot of how you play this extra deck in this deck is judgment calls. What is your opponent playing? What is it that they currently have on field? How are you going to counteract that? More or less. It's not exactly Dark World Control or anti-meta, but it can fall along those lines.
Usually with my games, they last from anywhere from 9 turns to 12 turns with this deck. I know Michael's games, he usually goes into turns, just because he usually takes a little bit longer on turns, and he plays this deck defensively.
Right.
We do not change any of the strats. It's just how we play this extra.
Yeah, me and him play this deck very differently. That is the last of the rank 8s. Let me reiterate something very important about your rank 8 monsters in this extra deck. They protect Grapha. Grapha is your valuable resource in Dark Worlds, and with the usage of rank 8s, he becomes even more expensive, important, as well as more threatening, and as much more as a resource. It's not Grapha that's the star, it's what Grapha leads into that's important. Now we're into the rank 5s, which isn't too much of the shining star of the deck. Tyrus is pretty self-explanatory. You can't really touch it, and I get to pop something. It's not bad.
And it's a fairy.
And it's a light. Have you noticed how many light monsters I have? A lot. BLS. That's all I have to say. Volca, I keep Volca in here because of things like Gores or that last minute. Usually if I play him, it's usually to burn something really big. It's my best play. Or you Gores me and I have put enough damage on you before Gores to burn you for game with this. It's kind of tough to get him out a lot. Both rank 5s, because I only run 4 level 5 monsters, but when it's my only play, or it's a play that I can make that makes or breaks the entire match or game, they're very useful, and so I keep them. I used to run Adrius, not anymore. That was more or less keeping in mind Macro and Deep Fissures, since those are at 1 now, and I've kind of needed the extra deck space a little bit more, and I never really got into him either. I decided to take him out. He's no longer in here. Exciton Knight. Exciton Knight is the desperation play. If I have nothing else, if I seriously have nothing else, and it's just something like Raven, Beiige, and one other card to make Raven level 4, or Trance Archfiend and Beiige, this is the play to make. It's the desperation play.
And he's compatible with this.
He's compatible with Gates and BLS. He's super, super compatible with stuff in this deck. It's just, he's the desperation play. He's not my first thing I want to do. He's more my last thing I want to do because it's like, well, shoot, I can't do anything else.
And he's got a tail.
Yeah, I guess. It's kind of weird. Zen mains, again, the defensive play, especially since when Macro and D Fisher, I keep mentioning that card. I really hate those cards. But yet they're also very good, and I would side them in many decks. But when those were very popular, Zen mains was a very good defensive play with Tour Guide. And it still is if I absolutely have nothing else to play. I don't see Macro D Fisher as much, but like I said, still a really, really good defensive card. And then the final card of the extra deck, Levier. Levier has shenanigans up the wazoo. So with Gates, I obviously banish a lot of different monsters. And usually the shenanigans I perform, the two really popular ones. There's a third least popular one I sometimes go for. Gates. I search with Gates with Snoww. Gates, banish Snoww to discard something. Grapha. Whatever. Overlay, summon Tour Guide, get another Tour Guide. I usually don't like wasting my Browws. Especially if I know this was going to be the only rank 3 play I'll ever go into the entire game. So I'll usually get the other Tour Guide. Overlay, Levier, detach, special summon the Snoww, bounce Grapha, bounce Snoww for Grapha. And then I have the Snoww to search for either a Gates later if they somehow get rid of Gates, or to get another Grapha. So that's some shenanigans. The other shenanigan is things like Fabled Raven and Trance Archfiend. Fabled Raven more so, because Fabled Raven opens up a lot of plays. Trance Archfiend's like, I need more discard, I'll get Trance Archfiend. Or like, let's say Grapha didn't end up getting banished, and I have a banished Trance. I could fish Trance, use him as a discard engine, while at the same time be able to possibly get Grapha back. So Levier's nice, I like him. And that's he's more or less the reason why I decided to start running Tour Guide outside of the defensive play with Zen-mains. I was running Fortune Tune, but I decided against it. There was just so much stuff that could just go, oh, that's cute, squash. So, and that's the extra.
So, I know you guys are like, well, what's your dark hole and all that kind of stuff?
Oh yeah, I should probably say that. I don't like Dark Hole.
You don't need it in this deck.
No.
Same with Bottomless, Solomon. I haven't
Air Force, Torrential. Torrential's at 1, you should run it.
Yeah, I had that debate with somebody, and I built a deck that was all at 1, and
It didn't do good.
Yeah, it was really funny. It was like a 60-card limited deck, and the extra, I think I had like 4 cards. It was super, super funny. But that just because it's at 1, you don't have to run it.
And just because a lot of people play it, doesn't mean you have to.
Yeah.
Like, what was popular at the time that I was first making this was the turbo builds, and I'm like, I don't like doing that. And you especially since like Grapha's a great card, but he doesn't carry a whole deck. That's my problem with Grapha.
This deck usually I beat turbos.
Yeah.
He's seen me. I go all out, and I've pulled some really cool stuff. Let's get into that side.
And usually what I like to say to turbo builds is just smog all day, every day. Hey, look, you discard a Grapha, cool, I'll just banish it, you lose. The side right now is very different from what it is online. The side is, again, something that's constantly changing alongside the meta. But I'll explain what's here right now in front of you. And I won't really go with what I have online too much, because honestly, I don't even remember what I did online. Because when I play online, either my computer poops itself when I'm trying to do a match, or I really can't stand a random player for more than a single game. I just don't like playing random people online, and I'm sure some of you watching this can probably agree with me. Playing people online isn't always fun. They're sometimes really big jerks, or they don't understand what they're doing, and then they get upset at you when you try to correct them.
And they tell you that graph.
In fact, I actually want to share, someone tried using Obelisk's nuke effect on me during the battle phase. My battle phase. And I'm just like, no, you can't do that. That's an ignition effect. He's like, no, I can. And he's like, I spared you. And he really didn't. I had a lot of answers to him at the moment. So, yeah. Reasons why I don't play online, and reasons why, if I do, I don't play more than one game with someone. I just don't like to. But, anyway, back to topic. Fabled Raven. I cite a third Fabled Raven for mirror matches, and for when I absolutely need the synchro plays. Like if I'm playing against a synchro deck, what I want to immediately get almost always is Dark Highlander out. And with Fabled Raven, I can do that a variety of ways. I could just discard Beiige, sync 7. I could play, after summoning him, play something to discard Gold or Sillva, sync 7 with that. Don't take advantage of the discard and just get the Highlander out because I know it's going to lock them. Usually that's the reason why I cited in outside of the mirror match. And that's more or less it. It's still very, very valuable. I really don't like mirror matches. Dark Deal is not a very popular side for Dark Worlds, but I like to play it because...
It's a common.
Well, no, not... Actually, there's a rare, and I want to get the rare version.
Oh.
There's a lot of decks, a lot of very common popular decks that run at least that one quintessential normal spell card. Like Heretics, the Seal, Elemental Heroes, E-Call, Spellbooks are all pretty much basic spell cards. Dark Deal allows me to basically say no to that while also being able to plus off of it.
Best combo... Oh, no,
not always.
Where is it?
Not always, Jason.
The Sillva...
And I shouldn't say your name. You should edit that.
No, it's okay.
It's okay? Cool.
Yeah, so...
Sometimes.
Yeah, if they have like a couple cards in hand, this thing will wreck their hand because their effect becomes...
Sometimes. I don't really like Mind Crush for the same reason why I have mixed feelings about Dark Deal and that the discard is random. But regardless, more or less the reason why I want the Dark Deal is because I want to stop that single spell card, if not anything else. And if I can plus off of it, cool. That's neat. Not necessary. I just want to stop the spell. But I run it for that reason. I don't really like Mind Crush. I don't really like the hand control builds. It's just my preference. I cite a third Dark Smog. When pre-September, I was just citing the second Smog, and that was it. But since we're seeing decks like Boojins and things of the like, yeah, third Smog's kind of nice. So yeah, I cite a third Smog. Deck Debbie's pretty self-explanatory, and a lot more compatible with stuff than Erad is. Just want to say that. Goes in match. When I was first putting together Dark Worlds and really kind of getting into the competitive stuff and putting together a side deck to have, I was like 6 Sams. And so cards like Gozen became like my answer to that. And as the meta has continued to go on from 6 Sams, because they're not really a thing anymore, some people still play them. I still run into them online, and it's kind of refreshing now. But, Gozen still answers a lot of different decks, answers Chaos, answers some Heretic variants, answers not a lot else that I could list immediately off the top of my head, but it answers stuff, and that's why I like it. So, I cite 2. Needle Sealing is my answer to a lot of Swarm decks. Obviously, Dark Worlds can Swarm, but they probably won't, especially the way I play them. And when I was playing against Karakuris, and Karakuris became very popular at our locals for a little while, I didn't have much of an answer outside of Highlander. And so if I didn't get Highlander, I was like, well, shit, what do I do? Skill Drain is possible, and Skill Drain is at the very end of this. You'll see it. But I was wanting a little bit more security, and I was thinking about like other stuff that, wasn't affected by Skill Drain and things like that. And then I thought Needle Sealing. Needle Sealing was actually one of my favorite cards for a little while when I was playing, like, really noobish, but I still like Needle Sealing, and I immediately thought of Needle Sealing going, wait a minute, that could be an answer to some Sword stuff. I know many of you are probably going to be screaming, Dark Hole, Dark Hole! People expect Dark Hole. I kind of like Needle Sealing a little bit more. It's much nastier in Surprise.
And it protects your set cards, because it says only destroy face up.
Yeah, like... I'm not going to have many set cards, and the cards I am going to have face up are usually the XCs, which is fine to destroy, or the Graphas. And it's like, Grapha's kind of immortal. Just kind of. So yeah, I like Needle Sealing. I cite 2. That's subject to change, because Needle Sealing's not super effective, it feels very nice, it feels secure. I like how it agrees with the deck so far. But, that could always change. Revelry Warlord, same thing as Gozen match, except it can be effective against a lot of more recently popular decks. Like, as we were saying, in a Madolche matchup that Jason was playing today, completely wrecked. Completely wrecked. And there's quite a few games where it does lock that field. It keeps my opponent on my toes.
We had people showing up to that duel because we had a ruling, so we were looking like we were going into turns, and like I had this, and I had Skill Drain, which is the next card.
Right.
And people were going through his extra, going, "Why don't you have this? Why don't you have that?" He's like, I never thought of this being a thing, and
it really isn't. Honestly, he shouldn't have had a card to answer that, and that's fine. That would be acceptable. This was just the one out of like maybe 200 different duels that something like that would have happened, and honestly I couldn't justify running a card for that either.
It was really, really funny because like you were just seeing him go, wow. He didn't draw his MSTs. I had Erad did his traps also in that match. It was a very, very hate oriented game.
And something to keep in mind with both Rivalry and Gozen. Gozen is a tribute, Rivalry is the type. And while either one is active, as long as your opponent has at least one kind of those monsters on field, they cannot initiate another a summon if it isn't the same attribute or type, respectively.
But they can still set.
Yeah, they can still set, but as soon as it gets flipped face up and that original type is still on field, they immediately get sent. But my point that I want to bring up is that this can help fight against a lot of different synchro decks too. If the synchro deck has a lot of monsters that are different attributes, this stops those synchro plays, because it's like, well, I have this wind monster and this wind tuner. I don't have a wind synchro to go into with this. So that answers that. And similarly with Gozen, as we were talking with Madolches, because what he had was like the one that searches Missile Gelato. Yeah, that one. Missile Gelato, and I think he was able to get one other warrior out somehow. I don't know how. I don't remember.
He had to pick between Spellcaster and Warrior, and he did not have another Warrior.
Oh, well that sucks. But yeah, that's just to give you an idea. It really locks up the field, and it locks what your opponent can and cannot play. Especially splashable cards, especially cards that some just play because they can.
Best card against Quasar, also?
Not always. Depends on the variant.
Chichi Hybridian and Formula Synchron, you'll lock that up.
Oh yeah, because those are you need. Yeah.
And then they literally just sit there and like go, damn it. Well,
I can't do anything now.
Go, you win.
Yeah.
And at that point I start toying with them because I'm like, oh, you play Quasar, you get to lose.
Yeah. And Dark Worlds themselves aren't heavily affected. The whole main deck itself are mostly Fiends. Gozen is Darks. Yeah, I don't have the Fabled Raven. So what? The second they destroy it, I can go into that Raven play. I don't really care. I care more about locking my opponent than just locking myself off from like one or two cards. And then finally, Skill Drain. It's self-explanatory. Do I really need to say anything why Skill Drain cited in here? I don't think so. It's really straightforward. So, and that's most of the side deck right now. I only have it at 14 in real life. Again, I play around a lot with it, and it's always changing depending on what meta's going on. But I still have the solids like the Raven, the Dark Deals, the Smog for right now, Devi, goes in Rivalry. It's really more or less Needle Ceiling and maybe Skill Drain. But I doubt that I'd ever take Skill Drain out from the side. So that's my deck profile. Again, I must reiterate the name of this deck. I want this to be known from now until ever is Chichi wo Moge. Chichi wo Moge. CHICHI space WO space MOGA. Like the Parco Fogore from Zatch Bell. It means to grow up breasts. And this is what that deck kind of does. So, if you ever, for some reason, net deck, you filthy, filthy net decker, how dare you. If you ever do that, at least call it by its name. And that's all I ask for. So, loves.
Oh, it is at 42?
Oh, yeah. Yeah, we already said it's at 42.
Oh, yeah.
It's 42.
Yeah, it's a very strong deck.
Everything.
It's a very strong deck. It's very consistent. The tournaments that I take it into, most people don't expect it.
No, because they don't know you play Dark Worlds.
Um, well, even online. So they expect like any deck, expect tiered. They see this deck and they don't immediately have the answers, so they side in it. I can still deal with those answers. You can play this deck however you want. It will.
Yeah, like
it will. It can
like
adapt
the,
to.
the big thing I wanted to do with this deck and have basically kind of accomplished in some ways. There's always room for improvement, and I always keep that in mind. But like the main thing I always go for with this deck, flexibility. I don't want to be like the turbo builds and just have it all be about Grapha, because that's not going to get you really much of anywhere. Maybe some regionals, maybe some matches. I don't know. But I personally don't like that because it's like, well, if they answer it, I'm screwed. And with this, I feel like I have a lot more cushion, a lot more threat, a lot of things people can't readily answer every single time. And if they have an answer for it, I'll usually be like, okay, whatever, or I'll answer it with something of my own.
And we'll have the name of the actual deck in as the title, as you can see.
Yeah.
And anyways, this is Jason. I have my own channel. I'll have it linked in his thing. I'm trying to get videos posted. I probably have to come over here because my internet sucks right now.
Yeah, it super sucks.
But anyways, I'm going to be signing out. You want to?
Apparently, I was told this deck was 4 pro, 8 me. I guess. I don't know. I like playing this deck. My problem with playing this deck, if I do play it online, people usually quit the very instant they see it. And it's like, oh, okay, so I usually don't play this online. Usually it's just against friends and real life. So, yeah, it's kind of sad.
So good.
It's okay. I don't like overhyping it, but I take compliments. Yeah, we're rambling now, aren't we?
Yeah, I'm going to hit done.
Okay, fine. Do.